I consider myself very lucky to have a birthday in mid-November. It's getting close to the end of the year. If you have your birthday in November where you can look forward and say, oh goodness, here comes Thanksgiving, and then here comes Christmas, the holiday season, and then there, looming right behind Christmas, you'll have the new year. And the new year of this year is fastly approaching. Where we're at right now, where I'm at anyway, is December the 26th, 2022. You may look at the graphic associated with this podcast, and you'll see that it's about alcohol abuse. And that's me. You know, I really can't drink. I mean, I never have been. Actually, I have been. You know, if you look at some of the latest research out there, I'm going to put a couple of links in the description of kind of things that kind of, you know, I've been looking at for the last couple of days. But I want to give you a little bit of my story. So, I was born, you know, as you may can tell from my voice, I was born and raised in Arkansas. I've spent some time in Tennessee and Texas and Louisiana. Those are the three primary places I've spent most of my days of existence. But when I was born, I was born into you know, basically on both sides of my family, and this is with a lot of people, as I've discovered. At first, I thought that I was like some kind of a lone duck, you know, a lone goose, a lone gun, you know, but I'm not. But on both sides of my family is alcohol abuse syndrome, alcohol abuse disorder, or alcoholism, however you want to look at it. It's the subtlety in words there is actually pretty big, but we'll leave that alone for now. But I was drinking young. By the time I was 5 or 6 years old, I was drinking regularly. You know, by the time I was 8, I'd pulled my first really good drunk. My parents divorced when I was young. By the time I was 5, I was in kindergarten. My parents divorced. But so I was. I had my first real big drunk when I was 8. You know, again, my parents were divorced, and I was left at home. And one night I got into this schnapps. I think it was peach schnapps or peppermint schnapps or something like that. Schnapps. And I started drinking, you know, that early afternoon, like Saturday evening, Saturday afternoon, and drink until I was still, for lack of better words, obliterated Sunday afternoon. And so I just and I liked it, and I basically stayed drunk anytime I could, and it got progressively worse until I was 18 years old. And at such time, I never did get into any kind of trouble, you know, not bad. I had a few misdemeanor encounters, but you know, it was all when I was a teen, and it all disappeared. But by the time I was 18, I was wanting to go to college, and I got there, and I realized I was not ready to go. I was still just, you know, I tried to quit on my own, but you know, I didn't come from a really religious family. You know, I went to it some, but it wasn't for that. It didn't help me with that. So anyway, somehow I found myself in what was called the Quapaw House in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And I spent my 19th birthday there. So I stayed there. Back then, you only had to stay for like 30 days. And then, of course, I did, you know, meetings for a year after that. And actually, for a year, upon my recovery, I stayed out of relationships. And I worked before I went back to college the next fall. And then I finally got into a relationship later on. And, you know, things had changed for me. But I did things right. I followed everything that the program said to do, and I did it for years and years until about the time I graduated college. I did really, really well in college because I was sober, and had someone to spend time with and a few friends, and I just really wanted to learn. I mean, I had a deficiency in learning because of the fact that I'd spent so much time drinking in my teen years, but I got myself caught back up. And I went on to graduate school, and I drank through there, but and I went through periods where it was bad. And then I found myself in my late 20s later on, and I'd went through some other bad things and got myself sober. And I stayed sober for years and years and years, and another 4 or 5 years, and then I relapsed again. Then I was sober, drunk for a year, then I'd sober for 5, and drunk for a year and sober for 5. So I've kind of carried out this theme in my life. But in December of 2015, I started thinking about things again. I found myself there. That's where we're going to jump to. So, and I started getting sober, and I finally poured out my last bottle. It was in February, I think it was February the 9th or something like that of 2016. And I stayed sober until around, I don't know, the last week of July in 2021. And I was down in Grand Isle, Louisiana on vacation. I was down there spending time with family and friends, and the next thing I know, everybody was drinking and having a good time, and I like being sober for all those years. You would think that I'd know better, but I didn't know better. I didn't know better because I went down to a store and I bought me a 6-pack of Corona, and then, I went off into that, and I was like, well, man, I need one more 6-pack, so I wound up getting a couple more 6-packs while I was down there. And then I kind of slowly progressed into it, and I had a few bottles of beer here and there. And then by the time 2022 came around, I had gone pretty deep into it. I was, that's the first of this year, I'd gotten into the bourbon scene. I was doing the bourbon trail, but without having to go to Kentucky. And I basically dove off into every distillery that I could get my hands on, every bourbon I could get my hands on, every beer, and boy, I was drinking a lot. And of course, it went on up until the 23rd of December, that night. And it went over into Christmas Eve, and I had just been drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking. And I just had this, as they say, a moment of clarity again, where I figured, I'm like, goodness gracious, I have got to quit this. I've got to do it. So, right now I'm just, a couple days sober. But it runs on both sides of my family. And, of course, it's just a horrible thing. I can't, I'm not going to tell my whole story. I'm just kind of giving you the outline of it. There's a lot of work you have to do. There's a lot of things that you have to do to get out of this, and I understand that it's not necessarily easy. But when you got people around you that you want to, that you've got to be there for. You've got to be there for them. But now you're not getting sober for them. It's not just for that, but you're getting sober for yourself. But they're involved. They're people that's important to you, and it can make a big difference on that. So that's what my deal is. That's what you'll probably be hearing from me. Now, I'm not going to talk about it all the time, but I did have to talk about it before I ended this year. I did another little solo video the other day, and God, that was my last day for drunkenness, and I don't know if you can tell on there. You should be able to tell on there that I'm pretty much out of there. I'd been drinking Wild Turkey 101, Evan Williams Bottled and Bond, and Guinness Extra Stout there for a day or two. So I was way out there. I was off in La La Land. So, and then I started thinking, and I was lying in bed. I was, it was, on into Christmas Eve, and I was laying there. I was just thinking, oh my God, what in the world am I doing? What am I doing to myself? Why do I keep on doing this? I mean, a year later, it's just turned into this. Every time I'm breathing, I'm thinking about drinking, or I'm drinking. And then, of course, the next morning I got up and I went through I started thinking about what I needed to do, the things that I've done to get myself sober over the years. And now I've been thinking about it for 2 or 3 days. I've been planting seeds in my head because I knew it was coming to this. You know what you got to do. You know when you're going to relapse. You know when you're going to get sober. There's no way of hiding it. There's no way of disguising it. You in your heart, you know what's going on. You know where you're at. You know if you're messed up or not. And you know if you've carried things too far. But anyway, I started thinking about what I needed to do to get myself better. And of course, the number one thing that I've always done is just to quit drinking. So I gave away all of my bottles, poured out some, gave some away. I had to ceremoniously pour out one. That's important, because it's like on you, But I gave away a lot of it, to people that are still in the mix, and they don't, it's not for me to judge what anybody else does. So that's the first thing you have to do, is just to get away from it, to get away from the alcohol. Don't pour it in your system, okay? That's number one. Well, number one, they say, is admit you got a problem, which I'd already done. Number two is for me, is don't put it in your system, Number three is you're going to need some help. You're going to need some kind of a way to get out of it. People use higher powers, and of course I'm not opposed to that. I'll probably be reconnecting with my higher power over the next few months, and that'll be important for me. It's my higher power is probably different than a lot of people's, and I may explore around. Actually, I own a couple little small businesses, and one of them is a media group, and one of the things that I was going to do was a tour of churches. I live in this county. It's a very small county. It's about like Delphi, Carroll County in Indiana. It's about 20,000 people in the county, but there's about 1 million churches here. I say about 1 million. There used to be more. There used to be like 120, but there's probably in 80 or 90 churches. The little small churches are dying out. But what I was going to do is a tour of churches. Tour the Catholic Church and this church and that church and the Methodist Church over here and the Baptist over here and this one over here and that one over there, and just to kind of go around and listen. In fact, I went Christmas Day to church, and I'm kind of a secularist in some ways, but I'm not. There's also a part of me that there's the part of me. To be frankly honest, is I've explored, the Buddhism and Zen for years and years, but like as Alan Watts has always said, is that religion's fun to have when you realize you don't need it. And of course, Buddhists understand that if you're a Buddhist, then you can be a Christian if you want to. So I'll be exploring my higher power. And of course, anytime you can connect with the universe, whatever you choose to call it, that's all up to you. It's a good thing. But I've not done that in a while. I've not been connected to anything. For years and years I would do yoga and meditate. And then I got so good, I got so sober and I got so connected to everything. And then I quit. I quit reading my cards. That's the next thing. That's the fourth thing that I really have to focus on. Was my cards. I always create note cards, and I have messages to myself, and it's I wrap them with a rubber band and I'll carry them around with me. Of course, after I create them, and I'll tell them I'll put subtle hints into my head like sober, and one card it says sober, and one of them will say family, and one of them will say growth, and then I'll list my financial goals, and I'll list my other goals. I'll just start reminding myself what's important, as opposed to, oh my God, I gotta go by down there to that liquor store and get me another bottle of that Heaven's Hill, or some of that Wild Turkey, or some of that Buffalo Trace. So that's what I have to do. It's what I'm going to do. And I hope to increase the podcast a little bit, increase the quality of it. There's been a lot of drinking that went on in this podcast in the past year. Of course, I'm sure I'm not going to take down anything. I mean, it's me. It's who I was. It's where I was at the time. But it's changing. It's changing, hopefully rapidly, where I'm at and where I'm going to over the next little while of my life. Of course, they tell you, if you study Buddhism, Zen, or if you study any kind of recovery system, they'll tell you that you got to live now. Like that John Mellencamp song, your life is now, your life is now. I had to throw that in for Tina since that's her favorite singer. Ha ha. Anyway, since I've been talking to so many Indiana people, but anyway, so I'm going to. That's what my goal is. I just had to throw a little dig in. Isn't that horrible? That's bad, Brad. You shouldn't do that. But anyway, those are the things that I'll be doing over the next several months. I'll be, making some changes, and I'm talking to people about, doing some solo shows and doing some live shows for our channel, for Outside of the Grid, and we're going to make things better. It's kind of like a little life improvement program. The only way to leave where you're at to go somewhere else mentally. You have to quit doing what you're doing and do new things, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to make some changes. We're going to make things better, and again, appreciate everyone that's helped support the channel, and your likes and comments and shares have been really, really great. Actually seeing it has prompted me to, is another thing that's important to me. I started looking out in the world over the last few days. Even before I was quit drinking, I was thinking about it. I was like, my God, I've got a beautiful wife, beautiful children. We've got a home. We've got, great friends and family all around us. Have a great career. I spend with really great people. I play with several little projects on the side gigs, and of course, with this podcast or this YouTube, Outside of the Grid has been it's been really fun for me. I've spent a lot of time with it. I've met some new friends there, all over the place. I mentioned from Indiana, but I have, a lot of new people I've talked with from there, and actually all over the world. I think from the 3021. I mean, he's in Australia, and then of course we got Kid, Check the Rhyme, over in Oklahoma, and just people all over the place. I don't want to have to list everybody all the time, but just there's people out there in this world that have given me encouragement. Starting at my home and moving out there, and anyway, I appreciate everybody. I most certainly do. I appreciate the encouragement from everyone. I appreciate viewing our channel, helping us grow, and I look forward to doing a little better for everybody. Anyway, it's getting close to that new year. Do you have any New Year's goals yourself? I mean, are you working on anything? There's a lot of things that people can change. I mean, this again, my birthday being in November, it sets me up perfect for going into the new year, because it kind of gives me a little bit of time to think about things and to get a plan together. But you don't have to have a birthday there, I'm sure. I just happened to turn 51, and of course 51 is like, well, damn, Brad, it's about time that you quit being a complete moron and get your stuff together. But what about you? And what are you doing? Do you set goals for the new year? Do you keep them? Are you serious about them this year? I mean, what's going on with you? Look forward to hearing about it. I'm signing out. Happy New Year, everybody.